Hello and welcome back to Pin My Podfic. Yes, I finally added that part to my intro. I pre-recorded all the videos before, before I actually made up my mind for the name of my channel. And today I'll be reading After the Fall by Innocent with one N underscore reader. This work has 20 chapters and it's 107.8k words long, with it being the part 1 of a series called Nights of Tomorrow that I still have to ask for permission to see if I can podfic the rest of the series when I finish this one. Now this is a genfic with no ships, and there's graphic depictions of violence. And there are probably graphic depictions of, other things that wouldn't be, that if you don't like gory stuff, you should probably click off by now. And I'll be leaving the link of the author and the fic instead of the description. I'll be leaving it as part of in the comment section because YouTube isn't letting me put links in my descriptions. Now, the chapters will be split into parts that the author has put in the work, and they will be about 3 to 4 parts long each chapter. Now, on to the summary. Summary. Amid the scars of a war that changed the world, Robin faces the emptiness left by the loss of his friends, mentors, and his father, Bruce Wayne. By his side, Midoriya awakens in a universe completely different from his own, carrying the pain of having watched many of his companions fall in the fight against All for One. Between two worlds and two griefs, they find themselves on the same journey, moving forward when everything they once knew has been left behind, and discovering that, even in the midst of loss, it is still possible to find purpose. Chapter 1. The Day the Sky Fell, Part 1. Izuku Midoriya's POV. The sky was in shreds. There were no clear lines between cloud and earth anymore. Everything was a swirling vortex of darkness, torn apart by jagged bursts of light. Lightning carved through the cracks in the heavens like incandescent veins. Briefly revealing the devastation below, the air reeked of scorched iron and dust, a suffocating mixture that filled the lungs like the smoke of a fire with no end. Entire buildings hung suspended for moments before crashing down, split in half, spinning slowly like the skeletons of a city that no longer existed. Sheets of metal and chunks of concrete were hurled for miles by invisible shockwaves. Each impact reshaped the landscape, twisting the ground, bending steel beams, and sending debris flying in chaotic arcs. And breaking through the black clouds above, two figures clashed like titans. Every strike they traded seemed to carry the weight of continents, capable of shattering mountains. Bursts of energy that didn't sound like ordinary thunder. They were like the toll of an apocalypse, ringing in the end of all things. In the center of that suspended chaos, Midoriya Zuko hovered in the air, his body covered in dozens of wounds, bled from long, deep cuts. His breathing was heavy, uneven, and yet his eyes burned, not in pain, but with a feverish determination. The kind of fire found in someone who no longer fought for himself, but for everyone left behind. The air around him pulsed with the power of One for All, expanding and contracting in almost visible waves. Each surge in sync with the pounding rhythm of his heart. Ahead of Midoriya stood Shigaraki Tomura, or what was left of him. The villain's body was a collage of nightmares, torn muscle, knitting itself back together in needless cycles, bones jutting outwards like natural blades, skin, skin split with deep fissures that throbbed like living wounds. Multiple twisted arms erupted and withdrew from his back and shoulders, as if the flesh itself had its own will and was searching for something to destroy. The air around him felt heavier, corrupted. Each step left deep imprints in the fractured concrete, and wherever his hands touched, the ground crumbled into dust, a victim of his decay. Shigaraki's eyes weren't just red, they were pits of madness, glowing with a hunger of annihilation that knew no rest. Midoriya! He roared, his voice reverberating like the bellow of some ancient beast, deep and ragged, cutting through the crash of falling debris. In an almost feral lunge, he sprang forward. The force of the leap shattered the ground beneath his feet into hundreds of fragments, the air displacement cracking like a whip. The claws that formed at his hands were a chaotic fusion of super strength, elongation, decay, and bone manipulation, each finger stretching into uneven, razor sharp blades. His charge wasn't just fast, it was relentless. Shigaraki tore through debris, ripping through beams and walls in his path, each impact sending shockwaves that rattled the battlefield. Midoriya's muscles tightened as he triggered gear shift, breaking the logics of physics and vanishing into a blur. Pain screamed through every fiber of his body, but he forced himself into a vertical verse, unleashing, flogging, and compressing all remaining energy into an upward blast, slipping past the killing blow by mere inches. Whoosh! The claw sliced into the side of his mask, tearing part of it away and exposing his bloodied face to the choking air. Shigaraki came down on him like a living landslide, muscles coiling for a final thrust. The bone blades on his hands lengthened even further, curving into a predatory arc. The skin around them split, spilling faint motes of that decay dust that hung in the air like burning ash. Die! He roared, the sound melding with the thunder swallowing the space around them. The strikes came as a barrage of cross-cutting blows, each one tearing the air with a sharp, snapping crack. The pressure alone shattered nearby debris into fragments, the ground beneath them collapsing into a jagged crater. Midoriya twisted in mid-air, gear shift snapping into place. It felt like every bone screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain and drove himself into a diagonal burst out of the attack's path. The blades passed within inches of his skin, the air displacement so strong it ripped away the sides of his mask, revealing the right fall of his face streaked with blood and sweat. Shigaraki's breathing was ragged, uneven, as if the very act of his existing was an assault on the world itself. He didn't pause to recover. He twisted his torso and lashed out again, this time driving his claws into what remained of a suspended building, cleaving it in half with a single motion. The fragments flew like a rain of jagged spears. Midoriya reacted on instinct. Black Whip lashed out, hooking onto a floating steel beam, yanking him forward with brutal force. In the next instant, he channeled One for All into his legs, Fajin's stored energy roaring through his muscles like a thunderclap. Heat surged through his body, his skin tingling, the air around him trembling. Smash! He roared, and the kick slammed into Shigaraki with every ounce of strength he had left. The impact was sharp, followed by a shockwave that shattered chunks of concrete midair and sent the villain crashing into a distant wreckage. The sound echoed across the ruined landscape, and for a moment the battlefield went silent, save for the faint cascade of falling rubble. Midoriya's breath came in broken gasps, each inhale like shards of glass in his lungs. He knew that strike would have obliterated any other opponent, but not Shigaraki, and he was right. From the haze of debris, a shadow moved, slow at first, then faster and faster. Chunks of concrete began to crumble midair, reduced to dust at his touch. Within seconds, the silhouette sharpened. Shigaraki was walking forward, his body knitting fractures back together as if merely stretching his muscles. His skin, torn and burned from the impact, mended itself in a grotesque ballet of flesh and bone rearranging. New appendages sprouted from his back, twisted like exposed roots, each one ending in razor-sharp bone blades. You still think you can stop me? His voice was low, but steeped in a contempt that vibrated in the air. Midoriya, I'll tear you apart piece by piece. In a single leap, he closed the distance in the blink of an eye, unleashing a fan-shaped strike with 6 claws at once. The air displacement was so intense that nearby steam beams bent under the pressure. Danger sense erupted in Midoriya's mind like a deafening siren. He twisted his body in midair, dodging the first slash, then the second, then the third, but the fourth nearly clipped his shoulder, slicing open his sleeve and the skin beneath. More claws followed in relentless succession. There wouldn't be time to evade them all. On instinct, Midoriya's hand dove into his side pocket and triggered smoke screen. A thick swirl of black smoke burst outward, swallowing the battlefield in every direction. The air grew almost solid, muffling sound and warping shapes. He moved quickly, using Black Whip to hurl himself toward a high perch of broken debris, feeling the heat of his own blood running down his arms. But even hidden, he knew the truth. Shigaraki was still there, hunting, and he didn't need sight to find him. The smoke wrapped around everything like a choking shroud. Inside it, each of Midoriya's breaths came with a sharp stab in his lungs, as if the air itself had turned into microscopic labels. His heart pounded unevenly, each beat echoing in his temples. He crouched in a floating slab of concrete, bracing it against his knees to keep from toppling. One for all still pulsed in his muscles, but the familiar heat was fading, replaced by uncontrolled spasms. Every recent use of Fajin had ripped more out of his body than it could give. His arms were broken in multiple places, his fingers numb, his vision blurring at the edges. Why? Why can't I beat him? He tried to focus on the smoke, but other images pushed in. Shigaraki, moments ago, taking hits that could level buildings and still rising. His body learning, adapting, regenerating more efficiently with each strike. No matter how much damage I do, he comes back. He always comes back. Memories surged unbidden. The faces of One for All's predecessors, firm silhouettes that had stood with him in his mind for so long, were now silent, only watching, no words of encouragement, only the weight of what had to be done. He told me to live, to pass it on, but maybe that wasn't his role. Maybe he wasn't the link meant to carry hope forward. Maybe he was just the last barrier. He lifted his gaze beyond the smoke, and for an instant, he saw All Might's smiling face in his mind. Then Uraraka, Ida, Bakugo, his mother, little Eri. Each image tangled with memories of embraces, promises, and fear. And with them, the vision of what they'd lose if Shigaraki escaped. Ruined hospitals, fallen heroes, civilians with no future. If I fall here, the world goes on, but if he gets out, The answer came like a steel wire tightening in his mind. I can't win, but I can make sure he doesn't either. It was when that a different sound cut through the smoke thickening silence. The unstable hum of a portal being held open. Midoriya turned and saw in the distance among the rubble Monoma Nato crouched low, struggling to keep a wavering vortex alive. His hands shook, teeth clenched, as if holding it was a battle against his own body. Midoriya's body moved before his mind caught up. He turned his bloodied face towards him and shouted, Monoma! The Balan's head snapped up, eyes wide. He was crouched behind a fallen slab, body hunched as if trying to hide from the war raging around him. In his hands, the unstable glow of Kurogiri's copied work spun into a small flickering portal, threatening to collapse at any moment. Make a portal! Midoriya took a step forward, using Black Whip to keep it from falling. Now! No destination! Monoma blinked in disbelief. You're insane! His voice shook as much as his hands. You could end up in the middle of the ocean, in space. You could die. The pressure in Midoriya's chest mounted. Danger sense wouldn't stop screaming. Shigaraki was closing in. There was no time for drawn-out arguments. There's no other way, he roared. This is the world's last chance. The silence that followed lasted only a second, but it was enough for both of them to understand the weight of the choice. Monoma averted his eyes for a moment. The arrogance that usually shaped his face was gone. In its place was fear, and something close to respect. He drew a deep breath, nodded once, and murmured, If it's to save everyone, then so be it. His hands spread open, and the portal's energy flared into a burst of violet light. The dark black circle solidified, spinning with the speed of a whirlwind. Air began to be pulled in, lifting dust, debris, and even small stones that floated towards its center. The sound was like a distant roar, mixed with the echo of something alive and hungry. Midoriya clenched his teeth, tasting blood as it trickled from the corner of his mouth. Shigaraki was closed now, his shadow cutting through the smoke, bone blades poised for this final strike. There was no room left for doubt. Shigaraki's roar tore through the haze before his silhouette emerged. Midoriya! He lunged in a monstrous leap, bone blades spiraling outward in jagged patterns, ready to shred anything in their path. The impact of his feet hitting the cracked concrete sent fractures racing across the surface like glass under strain. Midoriya drew in a deep breath. Gear shift was already active, warping time and space around him. The forging stored in his muscles burned like liquid fire, ready to detonate. One for all pulsed like a second heart, each beat heavier than the last. Danger sense screamed in the back of his mind, but this time he didn't move to dodge. Shigaraki closed in, his eyes blazing with hatred, his mouth open in a scream that mixed madness and the hunger to destroy. Bone tendrils lashed upward, aiming to seize any part of Midoriya's body. At the very last moment, Izuku exhaled and roared. United States of Smash! He poured everything into it, flashing, erupting into pure force. Gearshift accelerating every fraction of movement. One for all screaming through every fiber of muscle. The air compressed with a sharp crack before exploding outward in a devastating shockwave. His fist slammed into Shigaraki's warped chest with an impact that made the space around them vibrate. The shockwave ripped debris from the air and sent cracks spiderwebbing through the concrete for hundreds of meters. The sound wasn't just loud, It was deafening. If the world itself had screamed, Shigaraki's body was hurled backwards, spinning wildly, regeneration straining to keep up with the damage and failing under the brutality of the blow. Midoriya didn't give him the chance, using Blackwood to launch himself forward. He closed the gap, and with the last remains of his strength, drove him straight towards Monoma's portal. The vortex spun like a cosmic maelstrom, ravenous, the air pulling inward in violent currents. Shigaraki tried to drive his bone tendrils into debris to anchor himself, but Midoriya slipped past, seizing the villain's main arm and twisting it until the bone snapped. With a final roar, he shoved Shigaraki into the darkness. The villain vanished instantly, stalled by nothing. The portal's pull surged without warning. And Midoriya felt his own body being dragged in after him. He could have pulled back. He could have let it close, but he didn't. For a moment, he looked forward, towards the shattered horizon. If this is the end, then let it be worth it. And he let himself go. The portal snapped shut with a crack, and the world went silent. Anyways, and that's the end of chapter 1, part 1. And this one was written, first part written in Midoriya's POV. So, I generally really like crossovers. Like this one is MHAxDCU crossover, and it's very interesting since I've only read a couple MHADCU crossovers. Like they're very few and minimal. And so generally speaking, I'm not a writer myself, but I very much only write for my classes in high school, like the different languages classes that I chose for this year, and also for any competitions my teachers want the whole class to participate in. But the author's writing style is very descriptive and makes you work with your imagination and lets you really picture what's happening. And I really like the way they wrote the fighting stuff, the fighting scenes and all that. And I really like how they just in general how they wrote it, and the way that they showed how Midoriya and Shigaraki really just going in, transporting from My Hero universe into the DCU. It's very interesting and distinct because I've never seen anyone use it like that. I've only ever seen quirk accident, getting hit by a quirk or anything like that. But this one, actually wanting to go there was not there, in the DCU, but wanting to go somewhere else with the copied quirk of Kurogiri's copied quirk. And go check the author out and all that. Go check After the Fall by Innocent with one N _ reader on AO3. Make sure to check them out. Link will be in the comments. And that's about it. Time for the bloopers. And have a nice day or until you see my next video. He comes back. He always comes back. I always come back. William after Shigaraki.